Hello. We are going to be learning about Rhode Island today in history, continuing to talk about the 13 colonies. So I will present over to the book for us to follow along. Okay. So the last part that we read, oh, sorry, I really lost my place. We should be right around chapter 13. Here we go. Okay, so the story of Rhode Island. So the last thing we heard about were was all about the Puritans. Now remember that the Puritans, not to be confused with the Pilgrims. So the Pilgrims moved to America for religious purposes as well. They were called the Separatists. That was another name for them. They wanted to separate completely from the Church of England. They were still going to be Protestant Christians, but they wanted to separate from the Church of England. Now, the Puritans came about 20 years later to the United States, and they really expanded and took up a lot more land. They wanted to purify the church. Basically, they didn't want to be part of a church that was going to have stained glass windows and fancy robes. And so they ended up moving to America rather than stay in England, where they were going to be basically mistreated, and some of them even thrown into jail for wanting to change the way that the church service was done. So it worked out really better for both the people in England within the Church of England who wanted them gone, and then the Puritans, because they ended up having a really good way of life in the colonies. So they started with Massachusetts. Massachusetts was the main area that we heard about that was a Puritan colony. But we're going to hear about Rhode Island now. So they expanded into several other areas, and this is one of them. Now, an Englishman is, Roger Williams was born in London, England. As a boy, he learned to write in a special way called shorthand. When he went to church, he used shorthand to write down what the minister said. Roger's shorthand notes helped him to study the Bible. And the big question over here is, what was the main reason why Roger Williams disagreed with his fellow Puritans? Okay, so be thinking through that. Why did he disagree with the other Puritans? Because he's a Puritan, but what did he disagree with them about? Now, when Roger grew up, he went to Cambridge University, one of England's most famous schools. During his time at Cambridge, he became a Puritan, and eventually he became a minister, so a leader within the church. Now, Roger Williams knew that the king did not like Puritans because they disagreed with the Church of England. Roger Williams worked as a minister in the household of a Puritan who was a member of Parliament. So he worked as a minister in the household of, which is a house and all of the people who live within it, of a Puritan who was a member of Parliament. There he met Puritans who wanted to leave England and live in North America. So that's how he got connected to the Puritans. Now, Roger Williams decided to join the Puritans in Massachusetts. He wanted to be free of the king and the church leaders in England. However, as you've discovered, the Puritans who traveled to Massachusetts were not separatists like the Pilgrims in Plymouth. Puritans wanted to change the Church of England by example. So they didn't want to separate altogether. They wanted to have a different way of doing it, purify it, and then eventually the hope would be that it changes the Church of England through this example. Now, in 1631, Roger Williams sailed to Boston, Massachusetts. Governor John Winthrop offered him a job as minister to Boston's Puritan congregation. Roger Williams now disagreed with his fellow Puritans. He believed that it was time to leave the Church of England. Williams told Governor Winthrop that he could not take the job. So, Roger Williams found other work as a minister, first in Plymouth and then in Salem, Massachusetts. Both of these in Massachusetts, actually. So he spoke out against forcing people to pay taxes to support Puritan congregations. So there's a difference, right? He disagreed that people should be forced to pay taxes to a Puritan congregation if they weren't actually Puritan. He feared that close ties with the government were harming the church. He also thought that Puritans were not strict enough in their religious beliefs. Puritan leaders became angry with Roger Williams. Here's a big theme of a lot of people getting angry about anybody who disagrees with them. It's really sad that there couldn't be just different styles of church between all of these different areas. Everyone wanted it to be the same. Now, Roger Williams also believed that the king had no right to take land from Native Americans. Wow, that was a big stance. And that's actually a really honorable thing for him to do, to stand up for these Native Americans. Now, if they wanted to sell the land to the Native Americans, then they could, but it shouldn't be taken from them, and that's what had been happening. He said the colonists should pay the Native Americans for any land they wished to have. Now, Williams became friends with a group of Native Americans. He knew many languages, including Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. So he went to Cambridge, remember. He was a very smart man at a good school, and he knew all of these classic languages. So he actually also learned the Native American language too. Williams earned the respect of the Native Americans. Now, the Puritans decided to send Roger Williams back to England. Why do you think that was? Because he disagreed with them. That's right. And if he's doing several things that are going to prevent them from earning money. He's saying, don't make people pay taxes to you. And also saying, that you've got to pay the Native Americans for the land, basically. So he's trying to say to all these people that the Puritans should not be getting as much money as they are. So probably the Puritans are selfishly thinking, get him out of here. He is actually stopping us from getting wealthy. Not all of them, obviously, not all Puritans would have been like this, but this is just the general overview of why he was sent back, was because of some of these selfish people who were wanting more money for themselves, probably. Now, it was almost winter and he was sick. So Governor Winthrop said that Williams could wait and return to England in the spring. But Williams did not wish to return to England. Instead, he escaped from Massachusetts and went to what is now the state of Rhode Island. There, he spent the winter with his Native American friends, the Wampanoag. So it paid off to be good friends and to have been so kind to them, because they helped protect him. Now, in the spring, some of William's Puritan friends came to help him. So, see, not all of the Puritans were like that. There were some Puritans who just wanted things done their way, and they wanted to kick Roger Williams out, but not all of them. So he built a house and planted crops. This is in Rhode Island, remember. Now, Williams bought land from the Narragansett Native Americans. With his Puritan friends, Roger Williams started a town on that land, and he called the town Providence. Providence is like this divine thing from God. And Providence is also the capital of the state of Rhode Island today. It was the first town in the colony that would eventually be called Rhode Island. So there they are, Roger Williams over here on the right, I believe, escaping in the middle of the night. Now, the town of Providence was ruled by the people, not by the members of a religious congregation. That was a big difference. People had religious freedom. They were not punished for their beliefs, even if Williams disagreed with them. So Williams was not saying he wanted things done only in his version of what the Puritan church should look like. He was saying, as long as, probably he wanted people to be Christian, but he wasn't specific about what they should be doing. As far as the taxes and the land, or maybe he was actually pushing that stuff, but the way that the church services were held, basically. Now, unlike in Massachusetts, the people living in Rhode Island were not forced to pay taxes to support the Puritan congregation. So nobody was forced to pay taxes to the church. In fact, no taxes were paid to any religious group. People of different religions who settled in Providence were responsible for supporting themselves. So if there was a church that wanted to run, they had to get the money from the people who went there, which is what it would be today, rather than having taxes that people were forced to pay to that church. Now, Anne Hutchinson. Little by little, more towns were set up near Providence. Like Roger Williams, another famous Puritan moved from Massachusetts to Rhode Island. She was a very brave woman named Anne Hutchinson. Now, Anne Hutchinson always spoke her mind. She read the Bible very carefully. She believed that God inspired her directly. She said that she did not need the Puritan ministers telling her what to believe. Like Roger Williams, Anne did not believe that the Puritans were strict enough in their beliefs. The Puritans did not like having people challenge their religious beliefs, especially a woman. Now, like Roger Williams, Anne Hutchinson soon got into trouble with Governor Winthrop and the other Puritan leaders. When the Puritan leaders ordered her and her family to leave Massachusetts, her friends helped her start the new town of Portsmouth, Rhode Island. So, Anne Hutchinson helped begin Portsmouth. Now, as the number of towns in Rhode Island grew, the people wanted to have their own official colony. Roger Williams traveled to England to ask the king for a charter for the colony. Williams still had friends in Parliament, and they helped him get the charter. Now, people in Rhode Island had more religious freedom than in any other colony. Most of them really liked Roger Williams, and he was eventually elected president of that colony. Williams worked for the rest of his life to make Rhode Island a good place to live. He worked to keep peace with the Native Americans, and he treated everyone with kindness and respect. Roger Williams' ideas about separating religion from government can be still found in our laws today. So that was not the only inspiration for that separation between religion and government, but that was one of them. So at the time that we're learning about, both in America and in Europe, religion and government went hand in hand. As we were seeing, people are paying taxes to the church. In Europe, at this same time, people are going through the separation of the Catholic Church from other people like the Puritans and the Church of England. So there's this separation that's happening, and more people are starting to see that it's best for religious organizations, whether it's a church or some other religious organization, to be separate from the government. So this is kind of the beginning of that separation. One of the starts of that. Okay. Chapter 14, the Middle Colonies, is what we will be reading next. We are going to get to that Wednesday. So you'll have some notes to take on this tomorrow, but you are welcome to just get started on that if you want to. I will talk to you all later. Have a wonderful day. Bye.